Okay.
Okay. And so,
So which way are we going to go?
well, we're going to improvise.
Okay, sounds good. I love it.
So maybe just I'll ask you a very general question, so this way you'll see in answering it whether you go into something that feels, like is an opening for you, or whether to just continue with questions. But so if I ask just simply, what sustains you?
Sure. I did start to think about what sustains me, and in that process, realized that a lot sustains me, and it's very different at different times. That there's some things in the physical world and the emotional world, some practices that I do. I love nature. I love being with the elements in nature. I feel very sustained by anything having to do with creative process, self-expression.
Mm-hmm.
I feel really, I guess, feeling connected to things, to objects, to family, to friends. So there's an element of connection, and just really love to connect inside to myself. I love to connect to the inner world and to the outer world. I do a lot of, I take time to do practices and connect into spiritual practice and ritual and ceremony, meditation, dance. There's many rhythms, and I think the authenticity of it, like when I can really follow my own rhythm and feel the authentic expression of what's needed for that moment, whether it's, there's certainly not always the opportunity to do that, but to really allow what needs to happen in the moment and to really connect into that. I'm very excited about that. And I get a lot of strength from most of the things that I do. I love a lot of what I do, and it's really, so sometimes the question of what sustains me it's a big question, because it changes with each experience and what's really being called forth in the moment with that. And then, within that, the aspect of embodiment and movement is also a really strong aspect of that for me. So not having the body and mind and spirit separate is a kind of a guideline for me, wherever the entrance point is, whatever I'm putting my attention to, where my consciousness is. I think, it really is about having a consciousness and having an awareness and trying to be present and respond to what is being called forth.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that the single most important thing is that sense of being in tune with what is being called forth at the moment, and then there's a sense that it usually involves a sense of body, mind, and spirit not separated.
Yes, and sometimes that calling is internal, and sometimes the calling is the external world. So I think there is, again, trying to the process of listening and paying attention, then allowing what needs to emerge to be present. And there's a great satisfaction from following that pulse or following that flow, and really activating it. So, it seems to be like a twofold process of listening, putting attention in a certain place, and then something happens if you're, allowing it to happen, or actually sometimes it's being more actively involved, sometimes it's being more passively in relationship to it. But that seems to be one aspect of it for me, a big core of it.
Yeah, so some kind of a making space, a listening, being open to, inside, outside, what is being called for.
Yeah, and sometimes it involves a more conscious setting of sacred space or sacred intention or sacred time, really also tuning into the rhythms of life. So in some spiritual practice, there might be the rhythm of the cycles of the year. There might be rhythms of the cycle of the day, where things are more conducive to others. So it's tuning into that aspect as well for me. Mm-hmm. Certain rituals that happen at a certain time or place or something like that might be a part of that kind of experience of setting the stage for more spiritual sustenance.
Yeah. So where you when you started talking, mentioning that some of these things, some of these moments may be rituals, may be spiritual practices, and on the other hand, there may not be. But here, there's something about rituals, that rituals are a link between you and something larger, like, say, the rhythm of seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, rituals, to me, and ceremonies and certain kinds of prayer are a link to the past and the future. Rituals, to me, there's something really important in the power of, for example, so from the Jewish tradition, I light candles on Friday night. There's something really powerful in the fact that I'm embodying this light. I'm relating to this light. I'm working with this light, and many other people are doing that at the same time. And also in history, many people have done this at the same time. And there's almost like a pathway that's been created that it's like a stream or a field that you can tie into, and you're tying into this ritual, though, in the present moment of who you are and the environment you're in and the people you're with. And it's very different each time. Mm-hmm. There's a sense of, for me, the importance of both tradition and roots and repetitiveness and innovation and cutting edge. So it's like the tree with its roots, and yet the branches are there, and the branches keep growing. And you enter into this stream of the ritual where you are, and it resonates through history, and it resonates through community, but yet it's very personal in that moment, the particular way you do it, the way you would sing it or say it or make a blessing, or so you're really bringing yourself into it as a person, but it's bigger than you as well. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's a pathway. It could be a symbol, so it's the physical light of the candle, and you gather it towards you and you receive it. But, whatever your personal image of light is, whatever your meaning is for that, it's very, very varied, and yet it also has a traditional context to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the image of the pathway, and so the pathway that existed long before you did and will continue long after you do, but in being in it, in walking in it, there's a sense of connecting to all the people who did before and all the people who are doing at the same time, and the people who will in the future. And at the same time, there is something very personal and something that changes, every time that you do it, because it depends on the moment when you do it, who you are at that moment, what circumstances are. So that mixture of, the connection to something that's always been there and that's very wide and very much in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there is. And also the resonant field of people in my environment that may not be familiar with the ritual that might be with me, they're also experiencing something. So I think it ripples outward as well. Mm-hmm. And it feels very joyous, and it feels very It's one of the rituals I love. So yes, there's also an emotional component of feeling connected to that larger something, and also feeling, like another spark of my soul has been lit in my heart when I do it. So,
yeah. So, for me, the question comes when I hear you talk about the connection to people before, does it have also a meaning in terms of being a family tradition, or, how does this relate to, in a way, your own upbringing and traditions in the family? Is it something you're following or something you're doing differently?
Yes, there is a family connection. There's a cultural connection, so I do follow some of that, I don't exactly do it with it. Well, in that particular ritual, it is the same, because it's bringing the light and lighting the candles and making a blessing. So pretty much there are similar things, but there have been people that embellish on it. Some people might take a look at the week before and go over it and acknowledge the gifts of it, let things go that no longer serve, and move into a new cycle of the next time period of the week, which might be Friday night to Saturday night. So there are other traditions that I didn't do in my family that sometimes people would do that I might do, or making blessings and prayers for the people close to you, things like that.
Yeah, so it may have been enriched compared to what you have, but there's a part of it that ties it to your family, and beyond that, in a way, a sense of connection to all the people before, who did that.
And it's also cellular memory, so my body knows this. There's a cellular component to this. After doing it for many, many years, I could be, one time I'd be traveling in another country, not even knowing what day it is in the time zone, and my body would it's time for this. So there's also a real resonance with something happens because I'm setting sacred time. I'm setting sacred time that's meaningful to me. It's like, I think there are just certain times that are appropriate for that are more resonant in the field for certain things, if you're tuned in.
Yeah.
And that's part of this particular cycle. Like there might be a harvest time, or a planting time, or in the ceremonial cycle, there's a time that's more open for the energy of freedom and opening in the spring, and more inner deep work of the core and the darkness in the winter that everybody could relate to. So that's similar in the cyclical aspect of the week. When this time of the week comes, it's like, okay, sacred space, sacred time, 25 hours. And I go into that mindset. So it isn't just the action of lighting the candle, it's also an action that relates to setting sacred time and sacred space.
Yeah. So there's a specific ritual of lighting the candle, but there's also that ritual is a gateway into sacred time.
Yes.
And that sense that in a way that day of rest, or that day of special, there is part of the rhythm of life, that there is a rhythm for secular activities, and a time that's allotted to sacred time.
Yes, so you shift your attention to a different consciousness through a certain ritual. And I was just using this as one example, but it might be, someone has passed away, and every year when that time comes, you light a candle, and then you remember them, and you think about them, and so there's many ways that a candle can be used, obviously, but it does create a certain something. as one example. There are many, many different rituals, obviously, in many different cultures. But I think the function of ritual is to bring you to connecting and creating. It's like the groove, that pathway that's there. That you can easily slide into and just sort of ride the tide of that.
Yeah. So it's a gateway. It's something that that helps you shift. An inner gateway that helps you shift your focus,
Yes.
and then, in a way, be in an inner state that's more in connection with that other something.
Yes. It uses the pathway if you're open to be able to have certain kinds of experiences that one might not necessarily be doing if you're, paying bills or answering emails. It's a different kind of, like you say, a gateway into a state of consciousness that allows that by setting a container of some kind.
So, in a way, part of the answer to the question, what sustains me, is you're saying, I wouldn't want to just live with the ordinary consciousness of paying bills, of, that kind of ordinary stuff. But it's also very important to me to have a significant amount of time in that other space.
I think it's a both and. I think what you're saying is accurate, and I think there's also the importance of not separating those spaces. So, I think I ride both ends of that spectrum, and as I've expressed before, but I also feel that daily actions with again, it's about your consciousness of how you approach things. I feel the sacred in the mundane and in matter is definitely a part of this. So I also feel that, writing emails and bills can be, depending on where your state of consciousness can be, fulfilling and sustaining, because you need to sustain on all levels.
Yeah. So maybe those moments are moments of special awareness, but there is a quality that sustains you, is a sense that even in moments so-called mundane, there is a possibility of feeling that connection to the sacred or to something more than that.
Yes. If you look, I think it has to do with looking at the larger context, not just the very detail, but putting in a larger context. And also, it's again a mind space, I think. I think intention has a lot to do with everything. Setting a certain kind of intention and state of consciousness.
And so there's a connection to that larger container, and part of that larger container is the sense of in a way being in that path that we discussed, that pathway. So a sense that there is a deep satisfaction in being in that pathway and in being, in a tradition, not necessarily a rigid tradition, but a sense that there is a value in feeling the connection to the tradition.
Yes, and there's also value in the branches of the tradition, in expanding in creative expression in the moment with it. So there are myriad ways you can read the same text 1,000 times and interpret it differently. Embodiment is a big part of that for me. So how you physically enter into something is a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
And where the branches come in is in the innovation of how you are there, how you bringing meaning to it in the moment. So when some ritual, life now is different. Situations are different, and how we relate to it and how we create meaning and purpose through certain actions and traditions, I think, is equally important. And part of my life and my work is really focused on that, really the meaningfulness of it, and how these are opportunities for growth and change and awareness.
Yeah. So to use a metaphor, it's certainly not a dead tree, but there's all this branches and new leaves and the possibility of new branches opening up that makes it possible to for it to be evolving, and that meaning is not something that is predetermined, but there is a possibility of exploring and finding new meaning.
Right, because I do have a belief that I'm co-creating, and we are all co-creating in this, but that the co-creation has more depth to it than if the roots are there. Because, like in any kind of relationship you're in, or like a piece of land in nature, if you live in that piece of land through the seasons and through the changes and the weather, and you intimately know the different trees and the flowers, and you remember planting this flower and doing that, then you walk the land and you are in a different state of intimacy with it. And it's also nice to go and visit other places that you are very totally different than where you are. So I think that they really work together, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So in a way, it would be misunderstanding you to insist on the aspect of tradition, even though, it's important to have that sense of the pathway, because it is together combined with the possibility of constant co-creation that is based on the intimacy of living in that space. And so that it gives you, there is a room for you to find moment by moment expression, and an expression that deeply corresponds to who you are.
Yes, I think that's more accurate, and also the aspect of movement and growth and change, and I don't think traditions were ever meant to be boxing people in or stifling them. Although that has happened in our culture quite a bit, but I think the deeper layers of them, which really came to me the more that I got into the mystical understandings of things, and in many different ways. It's not as simple as one might look at. You keep developing and deepening into something that you are familiar with. And also things that are unfamiliar are part of that. So yes, I think you've captured it pretty accurately.
Yeah, and so in a way, even when you look back at the tradition, it's also looking at people within the tradition who were kindred spirits, in the sense of looking at the aspect of it that allowed for growth, that allowed for deeper meanings, that allowed for something that makes room for your connection to the sacred.
Yes, and the it's people, and also the rituals themselves, the prayers, the community aspect of it. There's room for everything.
Yeah.
And within that, there is a sense for me of something divine or something bigger than any of those. That's a unit. That's like unified. Throughout the world in the field.
Yeah. So as I'm hearing you, the two things in a way that I want to articulate. One is a sense that if we look at that metaphor of the tree, for instance, it's something that's not abstract, but a sense of, in a way, that the flow of sap, the flow of that living energy that you go there, is also related to a sense of the people before who have been following that tradition, and including have been on that path that allows for co-creation and self-expression and authenticity. But it would also be not quite true to what you're saying if I was just limiting to a sense of connection to the people with whom you feel this sense of kinship and gratitude, because there's also a sense of connecting with something that is beyond people and is a sense of the divine.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
I do feel that, and as a presence in my life and as a force that holds me, contains me. I feel the flow. So I often feel myself in my body as a tree and as a channel of sky and earth, and that sense of spirit, or what we call God.
Yeah.
And connecting into the earth and the channel between the two. So there is a sense of a presence of something larger that I forget sometimes and come back to and go in and out of. But it's ever present, and it was really one of the gifts of my childhood. So I did grow up with a sense of that and a relationship through my family to knowing about this. And I think I feel very grateful for that. And there is a sense of really connecting to belonging or connecting to the circle. So you're connecting to the circle, but it's sort of also something bigger, and I think that really is part of what helps me personally and sustains me in times where I just don't know. There's times you just don't know, where you're in very difficult situations, or something difficult happens in your life, and it doesn't really you don't understand it, you just are there. I think one of the things that is helpful in sustaining me, and perhaps others, is this sense of something bigger, and, there is something, the great mystery, where I just I don't know everything. I can't possibly understand everything. There's something bigger than just me, a bigger plan that's there, that I am just part of, and I have to have a certain depth of trust and faith that there's also a saying that comes up a lot. It actually came from a particular individual years ago, but this too is for the good. So we may not really have the bigger picture, but there is some place in me that there's faith that this thing that's happening can lead to good, can lead to more good than one might, not have imagined.
Yeah. So that in moments of our lives when we have moments of overwhelm, or of not, in a way, maybe some doubts, or life not making sense, or there is that sense of connecting with the idea that, or maybe not the idea, but the sense that you don't have to have the answers are beyond you, but there's something larger that you can trust. Yeah,
and that's, I think, also there was a time in my life where I just got to a place where, I don't need to understand everything. There are certain mysteries in life that are they're mysteries. They are that. There are things that, because of my human form, I can't quite grasp. I might have a fleeting glimpse, but I made peace with that. That it's really not. There are some things that are not known, and that's the beauty of the secret of them. Why do birds sing? Or there are certain things that we might have an intellectual framework or imagery, but there's many different simultaneous worlds, and there are some worlds that may be there that we just don't understand and shouldn't necessarily understand.
Yeah.
But can really vibrate with, or pulse with, or relate to, or infuse ourselves with in moments of that flow of relationship.
Yeah. But so maybe there is a difference between what you mentioned now, like a question of why do birds sing? And you alluded before to some darker moments where there can be more fear about uncertainty, or where is this going, or being personally in a difficult position. And so at those moments, how is that sense of that embodied tree that you're talking about? How does it come about? How do you find it?
Cellular memory. I mean, just going there, just noticing, just remembering times I've been there, times, or going to something that's familiar, or listening to the birds sing, or there, it might come through a conversation with a friend, where the right word comes to me, but I am actually grounded in the tree a lot, and also in the Jewish Kabbalistic tree a lot. I also do work with a lot of Native American tradition, Cherokee, and specifically. So I might go to, there's a dance to the four directions, or there's ways to embody energetically another state of consciousness, and so I might use any of those to go there. And that's where the complexity comes in, because I think a key in all this is coming back to that sense of authenticity. Like a bird sings because it has to. And we do what we have to if we're really in touch with that inner rhythm and that inner sense of pulling on strength and faith and something to sustain us. It goes back to being authentic with what's real. And finding ways to express that. So, the image of the tree is one that I use a lot, and that is one particular image that does sustain me over time. I can enter into the tree in many different ways.
So for instance, how do you enter into the tree, and what does it feel like, and what happens?
So the tree, again, coming from some Jewish Kabbalistic imagery, is very balanced. And it does connect earth and sky. It helps me get into many worlds simultaneously. So kind of centered in the heart. All the paths lead to the heart and torso. But there are times when I might need to call on an aspect of grounding, and really being in the roots and really being grounded and holding my ground and finding my center. And there are times where I might need to be more into reaching and giving out, and the sensation of openness and that those branches we talked about, or the side of the tree. There's one side of the tree that's more formless and giving and open, and there's parts of the tree symbolically but also physiologically that are like containing and restricting. So, I think again, depending on the situation, I can tune into those different aspects and hold that, and also keeping in mind the oneness of the tree. So the parts, but it's all there's a oneness in that. So through that aspect of grounding, I'm still, like in movement and dance, there's a concept called countertension. It's the more you ground in, the higher you can go. The longer your arm can reach. If your right arm is reaching upright, your left leg can reach back low, and there's a relationship that allows them to happen synergistically. So there's that feeling, you're in the entry gate point might be different in the tree, but you're experiencing the wholeness at the same time.
Yeah. And so, as you describe it, say paying maybe more attention at times on the roots, time more on the branches.
Sometimes on the trunk, being centered in the trunk, in the central column.
Yeah. Is it something that's a meditative practice? Is it something that has to do with movement? You mentioned how movement itself, has something linked to it. What is your practice or your practices?
Some of my practices are mental with, imagery and letters, sounds, letters. Some of them are embodiment and exploration of each of those places on the tree. I don't want to get too intellectual about it, but there's 10 different places on the tree, and they each have different qualities or aspects of life. So I might play with movement with some of those, in movement.
So let's take one example, one of the places and how you enter into movement or to connect with that place.
Okay. So we're talking about the traditional tree now, the Kabbalistic tree. So the right arm, the right side of the body, the right arm is about flow, outward flow, unconditional yes, never stopping, no limits, just going, and total openness, total outpouring. The left arm is about container, structure, boundaries, setting, like the child's running out in the street, going to get hit by a car. You don't want to have the right side in control. You want to be able to say, no, come back. For a reason, it's containing. It's an important process. The heart, the center of the torso, is the balance between those. So compassion, balance and compassion. So there may be a situation where I might be feeling more tight and restricted, and I want to really embody a more of a sense of openness and unconditional flow. And so I might just begin to either work with movement in the right side of my right arm starting, but I might also, in my whole body, just play with the movement qualities of flow and not stopping, and the ongoingness of letting one movement lead to another movement, and opening the doorways and just seeing where that stream took me. So I would just move in a very free flow way. Or if I was trying to embody more of a sense of structure or power or containment, my movements might be more angular or structured or disciplined or focused or cutting through things. So, if I were to be feeling a need for that kind of maybe going out to do some job that requires, or something in my life that requires finding my power or my center or my sense of clarity, and this, I might, if I were moving that way as a preparation to kind of embody that sense of clarity and structure and strength, that would then help me address whatever I'm going to address.
Yeah. So for instance, in the last example you mentioned, having a need for that power and clarity, you have the consciousness of needing more of that power and clarity, and you do something that helps bring it more into the foreground. But earlier you mentioned something about maybe that you feel like you need more fluidity in your life. So it's one of those situations where your organism, your mind, your mindset, your total being is kind of in a more stuck place, and it's wanting to bring more flow. So in a way, there's a little bit of I guess some kind of a need for a negotiation between the two sides, or
Yes, I was proposing them as two different situations, but yes, sometimes somebody could be in conflict with those two parts of themselves as well. But the ideal actually is to ride the middle channel, which is the balance between the sides. So, that would be more the place of both and.
Right. So it's not, for instance, a question of riding over the stuckness to bring fluidity, but a sense of, from the heart, exploring both sides and finding a balance between both.
Yes, and again, as I said, situationally, because you asked for an example. So, it's just, those are different ways, points of entry. You can also enter into the heart space and just play with the idea of balance, and that would be the balance right to left, the balance up to down, it would be, there's other practices of different sounds in each of the, they're like chakras, but they're not chakras, but there's different sounds, there's different colors in each place that you could meditate on. There's different letters that go with the different worlds, the different places. So you could enter into the tree in any of those ways. I mean, that's one of many practices. But I think, as a walking around the world being, I'm very conscious of my lower body and my rootedness in the earth, and my upper body and my arms as branches in the sky, and my torso and my heart as staying centered in the world simultaneously. I mean, I think that's an overriding image that I live in as a tree, and I may be more conscious of one at a different time than another.
Yeah, so it's the opposite of splitting them,
yes.
and of having the sky as a refuge from the ground, or those kinds of things.
Yeah, they're in constant relationship, and I really feel that that's where the spiritual aspect comes in, is in that wholeness of the integration of doing things in this world, taking actions in this world to affect the upper worlds, and also allowing in information from the upper worlds to filter down. And that highway of relationship between those is very important. And when I do put my attention, to the body level aspect of it, it is one of the vehicles that allows me to stay in relationship. So it's a connection within me, but then it allows me to connect and be present to those other places.
So there's a sense that, in a way, the underlying sense of what it is like to be a human being is to be living as a tree. And that if you notice that you're more in one side than the other, it's reestablishing the balance and finding connection to your true nature.
Yes, that is one of the ways that I work with that. Yeah, I think that's true, and that sense of authenticity of then it's that awareness, and then there's the other level of expression. So, but yes, first that grounding in yourself and in the different parts of your body, and in the ways that those relate to heaven and earth for me. It is clearly a metaphor that's carried me in many different times of my life.
So, is it okay to maybe give an example of some difficult moments in which this might have helped carry you? And how it happened?
It's a reality that I live with, and I don't necessarily associate it with a difficult moment. But I've had some physical challenges over time. I think of a time when I broke my ankle. It really sprained it really bad for a few, and I couldn't quite dance or walk with it for quite some time. And I'm not sure I'm actually answering your question, but that's the one that came to mind.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's great. I mean,
so within that, it was like, how do you dance when you can't physically dance? And the whole learning process of still maintaining a rootedness and not getting depressed or feeling bad because I couldn't do some things I love, like walking or dancing, to really feel the aliveness of all of that even when I couldn't physically activate it, so that, that alignment, the consciousness was still in my body, even when I couldn't physically, be as rooted or as active in the outer space. I could still find that relationship in my inner space, and the lessons of, how do you dance when you can't dance, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
So that, the whole mindset of, the impact of the mind and one's intention, like, when people who are training for Olympics, they say that, if you see it in your image, in your mind, and you feel it in your body, it's better to do that and not train every day. It has as much of an impact. So for me, that experience was one of, still staying connected and not losing faith, and not stepping outside myself, so that I could maintain a relationship to the ground, which I obviously lost in that moment that I twisted my ankle. And so it was reconnecting, to the ground, and having the feeling intention affecting my cells and affecting my mind and my spirit of dancing, even while I couldn't physically dance.
Yeah. So, in a way, it's talking about how do you keep faith when, not only is there no reinforcement for it, but it almost seems like it's reinforcing the opposite, that, what sustains you is that sense of, connection, authenticity that you get through the embodied experience of it and movement. And when you don't have it, that sense of finding another way of keeping faith. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and pulling on the myriad of resources that one does have access to. Like, there's not usually one resource. But, it did make me think of the tree, because I was both having to ground and remember to stay grounded, and also to physically, but also to stay in an elevated state where it was a little depressing to not be able to. I think there are many resources within that one can go to. And I think just being aware of what that you have a lot of resource if you put attention to it and notice what you do have.
Yeah. So, in a way, the way in some trauma therapies, people talk about resourcing as the countervailing effect to the overwhelming experience, is that sense that you have built, spiritual practices have helped you build a reservoir of resources, so that you have something to draw on in an overwhelming situation, that you're not just, if you lose access to one resource, you're not lost.
Yes. I agree. That's what I said.
Yeah. So in a way, could we say that faith is about the sense of, continuing to have access to some resources, so you don't go, there's not just that sense of this is the end of the road, this is, there's no hope, nothing possible, but a sense of being able to connect to resources.
Yes, I think that is part of it, and also, to even more than that, to understand that there's always open possibility. So, someone may not even have a resource, but that one can learn resource. So, I mean, faith to me is, I think it is about resource, and I think it's about connection.
Yeah. So connection, not just to people, but to the divine?
Yes, to yourself, to people, and community, and the divine. I think it has all four levels, and I think for different people at different times. But yes, it does include connection to divine or something larger than oneself. So, yes. In other words, one way of working with it is you dedicate your suffering and your pain to others, to something larger. So you're not the only one that's ever had a bad ankle or a medical problem. It's like barely a medical problem. You could, go outward to thinking of all the people who are sick and having difficulty, and that in itself can be a resource.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a sense of expanding beyond, just that sense of the poor me moment.
Yes.
And the isolation that goes there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect of the connection. But I think also if we use the word faith, for me, it does involve a sense of divine or God or, but is something bigger.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Is the key that I think connects all people, is that when you can come out of yourself to something bigger, then there is hope. As you said, I think that's a big part of it, is activating and keeping that sense of hope open.
Yeah, yeah. And so understanding that it's hard or maybe even impossible to find descriptions of it, but what would be the felt sense of it, the embodied experience of it when you're connecting with that sense?
Of faith or divine?
Yeah, of faith, of something larger, of connecting with the divine. Are there ways, however imperfect, that you can contrast that with not doing it?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a sense of joy and expansion and openness. There's a sense of excitement,
Mm-hmm.
of things moving, of energy pulsing, of flow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a very nurturing feeling, like something really yummy, something really open, and like everything's okay. There's a place, there's a calmness, there's an excitement, but there's a calmness to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of just knowing that things are okay, that there's a satisfaction of having a place, having a being myself, but also being bigger than myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess if I think about times when that flow isn't there, the word connection and presence comes back again. It's like you're disconnected, or maybe in a fog, or more confused, or not as sure of something. But disconnection, I think, would be the opposite experience for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That other place, of being connected can also involve sadness. It can involve, it's not necessarily just a joyful place, because it could be that, it's just, there is some realities of things that are sad, like war, or it might bring up an emotion of any kind. So I don't think there's a division that way, but I think the overriding theme for me would be about disconnection and
connection.
Not remembering that you're part of something, or that you do have resource, or that's your options.
So on the one hand, there's a sense of being aware of the connection, being aware that you're part of something larger, and experiencing that sense of connection, which is expanding, and gives you a sense of both calm and hope. And on the other hand, there is the forgetting, about the connection, the losing track of it, and that sense of disconnection that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
that's the dance. I mean, it's a dance to me. That's the dance, the back and forthness. Because I don't, believe that we can live in any one state all the time. And so I think people who have made some peace with that ability to go between the worlds, even those worlds, like to accept that disconnection is part of that process, I think have a better chance with that aspect of faith and hope, because it's just, part of the natural cycle. Like the day comes, the night comes. And they are all part of the same cycle. And so, again, when I look through my life, there were times where they were not quite as much integrated in part of the cycle, and I feel like now they are more, and there's a sense of really the wholeness of that too. So, part of one of my teachers would talk about how part of the yearning for that experience or that state of being connected is the connection. I mean, the yearning itself, or the desire or the awareness that you're not quite in the flow, is also a part of that, if your mind can wrap around that. But it is really a dance, I think, of the dance of the opposites and how to integrate that flow, because they are part of that. And in that sense, even the divine has all the aspects of these things that we might look at as not divine in life, but that is also part of the divine.
Yeah, so the moments of disconnection, separateness, isolation are very much part of that dance, and the dance itself is not just the moments of feeling the connection.
Correct. Yeah. It's the wholeness of it, and that's where that non-dualism between matter and what we see in life as maybe not so perfect, or just things, war, or people suffering. That is just part of the dance as well.
And so from that place, even the moment of disconnectedness is in some way a resource, because there's a part of you where you say, oh, this is a moment of disconnectedness, and it's part of the dance, and it's not, that's okay, that's part of the whole roadmap.
Yes, I do believe that it is, because that's a state of consciousness, that I don't think many people live in all the time, but I think it's a natural part to go in and out of that flow. Yeah.
So if we just take a moment to, just pause and think about, we've talked for, I guess, an hour, and to think for a moment about, just either something that feels important that you feel you haven't said, or something that reflects on something you've said and emphasize it, or, just take a moment to see what might want to come up as a way to bookmark this first conversation.
I guess what I would want to say is just to affirm to myself and in words that this world I'm talking about is very much a big part of my work in the world and my meaningfulness in life, and where my heart is, and wanting to do more with it, share more with it, teach more with it. I love the sense of embodiment and the connection of spirit and sharing that, because it really is my joy. And so it's a great opportunity to have a moment to immerse in it again, and move forward with this work. So I'm just appreciating that, and and I want to tune into the flow of where it's going to take me, and what needs to happen.
Good.
Yeah.
This is part of the Active Pause podcast at activepause.com.